So I will be going over some of our new form updates. So as Kama mentioned, I'm obviously the treasurer here for CAREB. I am actually I'm a current director and sit on certain boards for CAR as well. I've been appointed since 2020 or since 2024 on. So we just renewed. I think a bunch of us are about to head up to Monterey for our winter conference. So, and you'll see, I'm only going to go over a few things. I'm going to give you guys some, and I'm going to try and keep it in time, I promise. So if there's any questions, I do have a chat window up here, so I'll try and answer them as we go through, or I'll just hold them until the very end. So, and this is just kind of general update stuff. We're going to go over some of the key points at the very end. I'll show kind of where you can get more information. So in terms of and I've combined laws and forms together. So we'll see, and I've done this presentation a few times around California, so at this point. So we're looking at our 55 total form updates that we had, broken up into 2 forms and 53 form revisions. Of the 53 form revisions, 35 of those were what's called substantial revision. So what's a substantial revision? Substantial revision is more than just maybe a couple, like on the RPA, they moved a few things around for the lines for like, name and county and all that. So that's not a big substantial revision. A lot of times CAR will look over forms, as I know, Parisha's on standard forms, they'll look it over every 4 years just to say, hey, does this need an update? And that's where a lot of these come from. So we have 2 new forms that came out this past year. One is our Realtor Acknowledgement and Disclosure, known as the RAD form, RAD, and then the Unsolicited Offer Attestation, which is the UOA. We'll go over both of them. The UOA has to deal more with emergency declared areas specifically pertaining to the former emergency declaration for Los Angeles in the wake of the fires last year. So, but this applies to a lot of areas. So we'll be going over that as much as I can. This just gives you an overview of some of the forms that were updated. We saw updates to solar, to the lead-based paint disclosure, to the buyer counter, subdivision, the listing agreement, the SPQ and TDS got some updates today or this past December. So moving in first and foremost, and I might go a little fast. I apologize. I know I'm in that 45-minute window, so I want to make sure I get this all in there. When I originally did this, it was an hour and a half. So I cut a few things out and I'm cutting it down. So sorry if I go a little fast. Referral fee. Many of us deal with referrals, correct? On a general basis. We get referrals from other people. We get them in many ways. What is a referral fee, though? A referral fee is a commission paid to an agent for sending a client, buyer, or seller to another agent who then closes the transaction. And it is from an agent over. So, or from some company. Now, some people ask, can I get a referral or can I pay a fee to someone who's a non-licensee? Believe it or not, the answer is yes. You see, here's the caveat to that, though. I cannot make it dependent on the sale. So let's say Don isn't a realtor. He's not with a brokerage or anything, and he's got a client. I give him $100 for that. Guess what? That client doesn't close. I don't get my $100 back. Now it's just a straight lead fee. So we're talking about the referrals, though. If I make something contingent on the close of the escrow, and I want you to think about where those come from, because they come from multiple sources when you really look at it. That could be, while the real estate law does not set a limit on the amount of a referral fee that may be paid, a licensee may not compensate any person for performing acts requiring the real estate license who is not a licensed real estate broker or a real estate salesperson under a responsible broker. Remember, can't be subject to the closing. That's where I'm being very specific here because I want you guys to figure out what is a referral. So, under the California Association of Realtors, supporting referral fee transactions, I'm going to zoom in here, ensuring that consumers know exactly how their real estate professionals are compensated. Now, what this new law does is say that if you receive a referral, you must disclose it. Now, why do we have that? There's 2 types of referrals I like to bring up to people. One is, say Don sends me a client. I'm sorry, Don, you're just the first name that's on my list here. I can make it Roderick or Deborah or Kema. I'll say Kema. So say Kema sends me a client. And Kema's a licensed realtor, broker. We have an agreement, let's say, as example, 25% of the closing, end of story. That client, when that referral comes over to me, has built trust with me. Why? Because they trust Kema. Now, those are usually very easy to get done and get signed. Now, what started to happen is think to yourself, if you're a referral yourself and you go to someone you trust and they send you to someone else and then they end up closing that deal, but you realize that maybe when you signed your paperwork, you were at 3.5%, or even 4%, possibly. And I'm not saying there's norms or averages, but we all know what a lot of commission agents get paid on some of these things, what they agreed to. Now come to find out that you got charged, that person paid out a half point, 25% commission, whatever, to the person who referred you to them. Now you're starting to wonder if you had to pay a premium because of that referral. This is the result of a post. People have asked, why do we have this? This is the result of a post non BAC world where we are now seeing where we have to remove that broker compensation from the MLS. So now we're negotiating that. It's not predetermined in a lot of cases. So this is one of the tail end events of this. Now, the thing I want to bring up, we all know the referral that comes from another agent. What if you are purchasing leads like, say, Realtor.com, who collects 25 or 30% of your closing? In theory, that is a referral too that you must now disclose. Zillow, same thing. So you need to make sure you are checking with your broker of how to address this. Because as I go through, you're going to see exactly what the law says and why it's there. But this is now the reality. You must disclose if you are receiving a referral. And it's from lead sources. To err on the side, this was a question that came up a lot with CAR. Do we have to disclose if we receive a lead from Zillow or something where we're paying a percentage back to them at closing? Well, yeah, we're giving them a referral fee. That's why I brought up, is it contingent on the close? Because sometimes we have to think about what makes it a referral fee versus just a simple fee for the lead. Now, what if I work under my broker and my broker generates the lead and they give it to me, they assign it to me? So it's being deducted from my commission before it, like after they receive it. That's a different story. So speak to your brokers about that. That's one that my understanding is that does not have to be put in because that's done internally. It's already taken out on the broker's side up front. So that's something you want to go over with your brokers for liability. So ensuring consumers know exactly how the real estate professionals are compensated. As we go further, when clients understand whether and how referrals are involved, these are all the issues. See, we're looking here. This is post-NAR settlement. NAR settlement faces another legal appeal, and we've seen all these things coming forward. This is where the realtor acknowledgement and disclosure form comes in. And also, it does say right at the very top, are you a realtor? So, are you a realtor? What is, and we all know realtist, but this is a CAR form, so I'm going to say realtor. So as a realtor, what is a realtor? A realtor is someone who is a member of the National Association of Realtors who also ascribes to the Code of Ethics. I think all of us are realtors and realtists. So we are, by default, subject to that Code of Ethics. And it says right at the top of the form, not all real estate licensees are realtors. And you must select, I am a realtor, I am not a realtor. And it says, I am not obligated to follow the Code of Ethics. As it scrolls down, we have other disclosures that are part of this RAD form. Compensation from multiple sources. So are you obtaining any signatures or money from multiple sources aside from one? Is there a present or potential ownership interest in the property? So you must get those signatures from all those parties. Is there a referral or other fee received from or paid to another broker? So in the back end. Are you receiving compensation or paying compensation? So we have multiple ways this can come about. What is the compensation amount? This is where you would disclose that over. Whoops. I'm skipping through these here. See, here's that relation or special interest. And I do want to say it does have the part here in Part B that says other person related by blood or marriage or any other person with whom I have a special relationship. I do not want to explain what a special relationship is. I think we can all figure that out. And I don't think we should go down the rabbit hole of what those could be. The saying I usually use for stuff like this is, if you have to ask, then go ahead and disclose. You will never get in trouble. So yes, I have a casual relationship with this person. We know each other other than professionally, whichever it is. It doesn't really dictate whether or not you have to disclose the referral fee, because you must, but you want to disclose your information. And then, of course, as I said down here, the compensation amount, how much am I receiving? So say Latrice is referring me a client. I would then put in receiving compensation. My broker is being paid by, in this case, like say Latrice, let's say that's the broker. And then I would put the compensation amount either as a dollar amount or a percentage. Any questions about that? I know I skipped through that a little bit. We're good. All right, I'm moving on. Here we go. So the referral fee agreement, which is form RFA, many of us are already familiar with this. We've had to pay this or fill this out previously. This now attaches to the RAD form. So with this form, it's now completed to say who is getting the money and where. So one is disclosing, yes, there is compensation, which goes over to the client. This is now our referral fee agreement, which we'll be giving back over to the broker. So now one's going internally, one is going externally. And you all remember they made some changes to this. I know if anyone's filled out the referral fee agreement in the past, they probably had the question of which signature goes where. I know I have, and I know they made it very simple last year where they actually put in referring broker and in parentheses, broker getting paid for referring a client or customer, known as the principal, and then below the representing broker, which is the broker paying the fee and representing the principal. So, and I know it was mildly confusing as we went through it in the past. Looking down for property or transactions covered. This is a newer section in here because it now actually goes over which transaction is covered by the referral agreement. So say Clinton sends a client over to me. I close that transaction. We've agreed to 25% as an example. I send that over to him through closing, end of story. About a year and a half later, that client contacts me and says they want to buy another property. Do I still owe Clinton a referral fee from that? And whatever your opinions might be, the safer way to do this is to have in writing what it is. So the default says now only the first property transactions specified in 1B during the term of this agreement, or for the following properties, or for any and all property transactions during the term of this agreement. And we can set this to be no more than 12 months or however months it comes in, but it's usually no more than 12 months. Now, if you want to make it longer, that is up to you. But that is the agreement that you make. So it covers whatever is on there. And that's just something to keep. I think a lot of us, I know I've been in that situation before. You don't want to lose a contact or someone who is a referral source or anything because of a misunderstanding, nor do you want animosity on that if you're going, well, I've been working with them now for 3 years. Why am I still paying you? So, and again, referring broker and representing broker, just remember when this is filled out, this is not filled out by you as the signing. When it comes to referral broker, it is what is the broker's name and who is your office manager or broker of record or designated officer, whatever it is. All other forms we sign as the representative to the broker. This is one where, and I know we have many brokers on this call, you will be filling this out for your agents or completing and signing. So because of that, there were changes made to multiple other forms. Our buyer representation and our residential listing agreement both now have sections that talk specifically about the broker paying a referral fee related to the representation of the seller. You'll see at the top is the change to the residential listing agreement in section 2C5. Below that is the PSRA, which is the short version of the BRBC. If everyone remembers, say I'm at an open house and I don't want to go through the whole BRBC, I can give the representation, the PSRA form, which is a shorter version of that. And it says in there that I'm paying a referral fee for the representation of the buyer. Or at the bottom, of course, our buyer representation that says broker is paying a referral fee related to the representation. This is just a way for us to disclose this. It gets disclosed to the client so that they know that there is some referral fee that is being passed on for their representation. Now we look here at the BRBC to be very specific. Now we, of course, as you know, we have the form where it has the grid aspect and then the legality part of it. In paragraph G, number 4, which has been added, that says if broker will receive compensation from buyer and another source, see the realtor acknowledgement and disclosure, otherwise known as the CAREB form, which we just went over. So this is the section that says if you are receiving a referral, you are completing your BRBC, you are checking the box, and you are completing the RAD form. And then, of course, you're going to be doing the referral fee agreement as well. I just wanted to put this in because since I was going over form updates, there was one other change that was made to the buyer representation form, which says right here, just above E4, E3, where it has that continued right to compensation. Where does that come from? And I can't tell you how many times I still see this on compliance review where agents aren't filling this out. So let's say Deborah is my client and we have either exclusive or non-exclusive. I'll go with non-exclusive, right? So we have a non-exclusive agreement that goes for 90 days. At the end of that 90 days, she lets me know, hey, guess what? I'm not going to work with you anymore. I showed Deborah and had what's called broker involvement specifically on, say, 15 properties. At the end of that 90-day period, I've left this section blank. She then turns around and buys a property from Clinton, and it's one of those 15 properties that I had shown and had broker involvement during our representation period. How much money do I get off that? Absolutely nothing. Why? Because I did not check a time frame for the continuation period on this. And this is what's very important. You can put 30 days, 90 days, 120, 360 days. I generally don't pass 6 months. That's just me personally. I've seen people go longer, whatever you can get to agree to. Generally, you don't lock up those properties for forever and ever, though. But the point is that you should be, I shouldn't say you should be putting something in there because it protects you and it protects your work. So you put that in, and exclusive, non-exclusive, those are all still whatever is broker involvement. Now, here's the part that got a little added. When does the time frame start? So it says continuation period shall be X number of calendar days after the following. Either one, if this agreement is not canceled under paragraph 5, then the end of the actual representation period. So let's say the time frame starts at the end of that 90 days, that's when it expired. Now, let's say I'm in an agreement and I receive a notice that said Deborah doesn't want to work with me anymore. It would start, the timer here would start the second it's canceled. Now, if it's an exclusive agreement, remember, by default, it's a 30-day written notice period. So it would start at the end of that 30-day notice period. So this just clarifies these timelines so that we are better prepared and it's less lawsuits as a result. Now, before I move into digital advertising, do we have any questions about the BRBC and some of the changes that have come in? I'm going to look over at Latrice. I'm not a realtor. For all my residential leads to realtors, car generator referral form, do you suggest I inform the receiving agent to complain something in the car form to mitigate any risks and disclose? Okay, are you a real estate agent, just not a realtor? Latrice? Not a realtor, but you're a real estate agent. Are you a licensee? Okay. And you work under a broker, correct? Okay, then good. I had to go through that because there are certain things that apply. Again, if you're not a licensee, it can't be dependent on the closing or someone's going to get popped. So in that case, the question was, do you suggest I inform the receiving agent to complete and send me the CAR form to mitigate any risk and ensure compliance? Absolutely, because it's actually part of the law. So I would be completing that CAR form. You have to make sure it is disclosed on their end that they are receiving. They're the ones who have to complete that. If you refer it, they're paying you. They have to complete that, but you should be completing a referral agreement. So that'll protect you and your broker. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, you don't have to fill out the CAR form. They have to fill out the CAR form with their client if they're a realtor. Cool? Yes, I would fill out both forms. So we can talk about it afterwards too. So, and I hope everyone understood what I said there. Remember, the form gets filled out between, so say I'll use you an example. Say Latrice sends me a client. Okay, we're going to fill out a referral fee agreement. We should be doing that regardless. Okay, that'll protect her broker, and me. Now, I'm going to turn around and work with that client. I have to complete the form with them, the RAD form, in addition to the BRBC, all that stuff. So that's where this all comes in, is that we're now disclosing all this. So fill both out. So that's where the two come in. So good question on that. So digitally altered images. I'll make sure we're good on time. When we're dealing with a digitally altered image, we've all kind of dealt with this. I don't know if anyone's seen this so far. This is a big deal because it can actually affect, this is something that could be enforceable by the DRE as well. And I'll explain where that comes in, possibly. So digitally altered images. What is a digitally altered image? It is something that is created by or at the direction of the real estate broker or salesperson or a person acting on their behalf for the sale of real property. It's in an advertisement or other type of promotional material altered through the use of photo editing software or AI, artificial intelligence, and has to add, remove, change elements in the image. So here's where we come to the law. And I say that because it's very specific. There are things that are matters of practice that we deal with. And then there are actually things that are part of the law. It means it's gone through the legislative process, and there's something that could come with either penalties, civil, loss of freedom, all sorts of things, right? So AB 723, which just went into effect, requires a real estate broker or salesperson who includes a digitally altered image as defined in an advertisement or other promotional material for the sale of real property to include a disclosure as specified. It is if the advertisement or promotional material is posted on an internet website, the bill would require the real estate broker or salesperson to additionally include the same image without alteration. And also, by imposing this new requirement on real estate licensees, the violation of which is a crime, this bill would impose a state-mandated local program. Now, who's going to enforce this? Well, of course, it's going to be through the MLS, but since it is also through the Business and Professions Code, this is something that can be mandated or that can be penalized through the Department of Real Estate. Because if I am doing any form, which is where it goes to both real estate agents and realtors, I could have a code of ethics violation, I could have a violation with my MLS, and I could possibly have something with the Department of Real Estate because I have committed fraud. And that is why you guys have to be careful you follow this one, okay? And it's not, there's a lot of little caveats to it, so we're going to go over that. Here's the Business and Professions Code as I wanted to put in just to show this is the actual statute for it. Under AB 723, any real estate broker or salesperson acting on behalf who includes the digitally altered image for the sale of real property shall include in the advertisement or promotional material a statement disclosing the image has been altered and a link to the publicly accessible internet website or URL code. So the statement shall be reasonably conspicuous and located on or adjacent to the image and shall include language indicating the unaltered image can be accessed in the link otherwise. So what does that mean? If I have an image, and I'll show you, say I have, like I just did one for a listing, and we did some changes to the environment on there, and I had to put on altered image or digitally altered image. Now, could I put it in the comments of the MLS? Possibly. How is that comment going to be seen by the consumer? This is where you have to be careful. I'm going to say I'm not an attorney, and even the attorneys are like, it depends right now, because we're trying to figure this one out. So if I have an image, picture yourself as a consumer. If I see an image, but I don't see the disclosure because it's not conspicuous, I have to click to see the comment, you probably need to find a way to put that in there somewhere where it shows up on the image. And then, of course, I have to have the image following it somewhere that shows, ideally directly after, this is the original image, this is the altered image, here's the original image. Now, you can also put a QR code that shows it. Those can be a little messy, but there's different ways to get this through. Now, if an advertisement or promotional material posts on an internet website over which a real estate broker or salesperson or person on their behalf has control, they shall include the unaltered version. That's what I just went over. So you must comply with this because of the link and publicly accessed website. And of course, you shall include that language, which is just a repeat for the advertisement or promotional material. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. Okay. And then, of course, it defines what is a digitally altered image. And, of course, what it is not. That does not include an image where only lighting, sharpening, white balance, color correction, angle, straightening, cropping, exposure, or other common photo editing adjustments are made. So, same example on the property. There was one photo I really didn't like how it showed some things on the street. I thought it made the picture look bad. I cropped the image. That is okay. I am allowed to crop an image. I am allowed to, like normal sharpening, or maybe we change a little bit of the lighting or stuff like that. Normal editing on a photo that you would have done that doesn't substantially alter the substance of the photo, that is acceptable. So, but if you're ever curious, or concerned, you can put that in. So, adds, removes, or changes elements in the image, including but not limited to the fixtures, furniture, appliances, flooring, walls, paint, color, hardscape, landscape, facade, floor plans. Basically, let's be real. We all know when we're tweaking with these photos. We all know when we're making it look different than it really is. You know, I've changed things that have to do maybe with the sky. We've added some clouds in to make it look like a sunnier day or something. You know, I've had people bring up a common example is a fireplace, right? So let's say I have a fireplace and we put the fire in because we just don't want to put the fire in. That you must disclose. And I've had this one come up a few times. People say, oh, I don't have to worry about the fires, right? Here's one that actually has a lawsuit behind it. And I found this one out from the DRE. So there was someone who actually did sue over it because they bought the property. The inspector said, oh, well, we haven't checked the chimney because you got to get someone out to do a chimney sweep. And when that was complete, they didn't do it because they looked and they said, oh, look, there was a fire in the fireplace in the photos. And I'm sure it works just fine. And they bought the property. And when they went to light a fire, they realized they couldn't. And it cost them $45,000 to fix the fireplace. That lawsuit ended up being about 200 something thousand dollars later. So yes, that can be a big deal. So if you put a fire in a fireplace, disclose it or light the fireplace, one of the two. So that's where this comes from. And you got to see where it is. What is a material fact? A material fact is something that a buyer would reasonably either make or not make or would cause them to make their decision on purchasing the property. That is not for us to decide. That is for the consumer to decide. So we must err on the side of caution with that. So here's an example of one property that we're seeing here. Here is the final MLS that was up. And of course, here is the original imaging. This is why this has become a problem. And if you don't think this is an issue, I'll tell you right now, many others do. These are just some things that have come up over the last year that was used to show. These are public comments that were put out. As a realtor, I'll tell you this isn't mildly infuriating. It's also unethical and misleading. I hate this. I wish we could report them. How is this not considered some form of false advertising? I know I sat in a CAR conference where this was coming up heatedly with people last year. So it was only a matter of time before some regulation came in to dictate this. And a lot of times, I mean, let's be real. When you advertise, what do you use for the determination? Well, like, look at this beautiful property and what ultimately we think this is how it goes, right? And this is how it ends up being shown, right? The image is altered. The unaltered image can be accessed here. I can either click a link, I can have a QR code, or I will have it directly following. Is this illegal? Yeah, actually it is. It's, but obviously it's because it's showing what's where. So this is just to give you an extreme example of everything. But the most important part is that we have the conspicuous writing that says the image is altered. Unaltered images next to the image, or the unaltered image is located here. So that's the big thing that we have to look for. So now, what is not digitally altered? As I said, it's lighting, sharpening, white balance, color correction, angle, straightening, cropping, exposure, those common photo editing things. I'm being very repetitive on purpose because this is just the other day, I got a call from an agent from a different company I've worked with in the past, said, hey, can you help me out with this digitally altered stuff? And I was just very clear. I go, well, what are you doing? And they were just changing color on the background. They were making it a little brighter. I said, you're probably okay. Mind you, I'm not the end all be all of saying, but, I think we have a reasonable knowledge of what is this? Now, you always have to be careful when you do your imaging. And I'll tell you this from testifying in court as a certified witness. When we go into these things, I've seen properties where the agents kind of manipulate those images, how they take the photographs and make it look like other parts of the property are part of the subject property. Those rules still apply. That's not altering the image. That is funky photography. So you still have to be very careful about that. This pertains specifically to when you use digital alteration to do it. And do I need to put a disclosure in if I've put furniture in a home? Absolutely. I have to show the image with the furniture and then without the furniture that's been digitally altered. So these are all things we're using something to alter that premises. So that's why. It is effective. It was actually effective. Good question. Pamela said, is AB 723 effective immediately? It became effective January 1. Properties that were input into the MLS prior to January 1 are fine. It's the listings that have been updated or input on or after January 1 that are being regulated now. So if I had an altered image before January 1, haven't touched it or edited it at all, I don't have to go and update and put new images in. But it's effective for anything that started. But as I will go over, you want to check the rules and regulations of your specific MLS. So that was a slide that's coming up here. You have to check your MLSs. So here's the same thing, a link to publicly accessible website. What must be in that statement? That the statement must be reasonably conspicuous, located on or adjacent, or must state that it is there. And as I put here, please check with your MLS. Like I know here in San Diego, we have two MLSs in San Diego proper. We have CRMLS and we have SDMLS. Each one has a different rule of how they're making that be followed. So like SDMLS had a certain rule pertaining to they wanted one image behind the other, where CRMLS was like, we're okay. You can have it as long as they're all in there. So make sure you're checking with your local MLS. So because those rules may prohibit branding, captioning, links in the photos, MLSs are also concerned the link won't work. It won't link to the correct photo, or that brokers will use the link for self-promotion. So each one is doing this a little bit different. The main thing, which when you're concerned, what does the consumer need to know? The consumer needs to know that this was an altered image. That's the biggest thing. And honestly, you have to do it as it works. That's their big thing. So follow what your MLS says. There may be stricter requirements such as complete prohibition. So some MLSs may, I don't know of any who have, they may prohibit the submission of any digitally altered photo. They could also say you can only include unaltered images or digitally altered images with the links. So these are all things that your MLSs might do. Let me skip through something here. Okay. I put in some stuff here for CRMLS. That's why in the RLA, which is the residential listing agreement, there has been a section added now under 12C that does pertain specifically to digitally altered images, which says if broker uses these images in an advertisement or other promotional material, they must comply with the Business and Professions Code 10140.8. So that is where you have to follow this. It says it in the RLA, discloses it over to the client, and it tells the seller what you have to do, and that it is now part of the contract, so you don't get pushback from them. Also, there were changes made into the multiple listing service addendum, which is CAR Form MLSA. Very specific right here. It says your marketing options, which one, it has stuff that talks about your marketing, and it does actually say in the MLSA, which talks about the digital advertising. Pertaining to marketing options, which I know I have to explain this a very specific way. I'm sure we've all heard of the issues that have come up from some companies pertaining to clear cooperation and keeping properties off market, still advertising them, who's available to see them. I don't want to get into a whole thing about that right now because trust me, I have very strong feelings on making sure properties are available to all. And I know that has issues in the past. But what happens is we do have now options for the marketing option for beginning of listing, delayed marketing, and limiting exposure. This, again, you have to check with your MLS to see what is allowed. Just know there have been changes made to add for the delayed marketing option where you can market the property or delay it and show it and when that has to be done in accordance with clear cooperation. So just know there have been changes made to the MLSA for this, but check with your local MLS and association to see exactly what pertains to this. I know it's been kind of back and forth. Okay. So as far as changes to the residential purchase agreement, CAR Form RPA, of course, as I said, minor changes was the restructuring of where the city and county and all that is. There were some changes, which is right here, which is occupied units. And it's just a clarification. When you have a non-owner occupied unit, so anyone other than the owner, so say a tenant, grandma, my cousin, my best friend from college, whatever, that is an occupant to the property. And in the state of California, an occupant to the property has rights. Them not vacating means you have to go through a process to remove them. That has become very costly to many of our clients. So with this being said, we're supposed to be filling out the TOPA, which is the tenant occupancy property addendum. By not filling that out, we're not giving adequate disclosure. So what's happened here is it said, okay, fine. If you're not doing the TOPA, it is default that the property will be delivered vacant. So this kind of puts it on us as well as the seller to say, hey, or the agents to say, hey, make sure you guys are advising them, because it says in here, if you're not doing this correctly, the default is the property will be delivered vacant. So, and now if the property is not delivered vacant, obviously we have a contract issue and possibly a legal issue. And then the attorneys get involved, and what ends up happening is they're the only ones who make money. So we want to try to avoid that. There's also an added section under E, which says electrical system inspection and disclosure. This complies with Civil Code 1102. This was always there. It's just covered by our general inspection contingency. But there's been situations where people feel, oh, I didn't know I could get a separate electrical inspection. Obviously, some of the biggest issues come from either electrical or plumbing. The electrical is part of the Civil Code, so they added a separate section and they're discussed specifically and let the client know as the buyer, hey, you can go get an electrical inspection if you would like to. And As for 11A3, that talks about seller property questionnaire exemptions and how they may use the SPQ if it's an exempt property disclosure. Any questions so far? I haven't put you all to sleep yet because your computers are all up. I know you're all on Instagram, right? We're good. Okay, I see a couple laughs. Okay, Latrice, at least you're telling me the truth, man. So, all right. Here's what I want you all to pay attention to. Please get off TikTok for 1 second. Don't pay attention to what the news was said earlier today. Like, let's pay attention to this one because I caught this one. A lot of us caught this one. I think it's kind of funny. Assignments, specifically, what is an assignment? An assignment say I have a trust. It's been in the contract forever. While in escrow, I want to put the property in my trust. Can the seller stop me? No. Why? The trust is me. I am the trust. It's very simple. It's a simple assignment over. I'm not going to get into nomination or anything. I'm just going to say very clearly, where do we see issues with this? Well, let's say I am unable, and of course, I'm unable to buy my property. I've moved past my contingency period, and Don is my friend and says, hey, I'll buy the property and we'll figure something out, whatever. We'll do it as a non-owner occupied. I don't know. We figured out, transfer that purchase over. I don't lose my deposit. Now, where does this become an issue for some of our clients? Don's taken over my contract, and Don's also giving me $20,000. We like to call that wholesaling, right? And we've all dealt with that a little bit. Here's the kicker. Beforehand, it was, okay, well, if it's not a reasonable denial, the seller must agree to that. Well, there's a nice little line that's been added in here that says seller withholding of consent shall be deemed reasonable. So withholding of the consent by the seller to allow the assignment, if buyer is to receive any monetary or other consideration for the assignment. So now it's in the contract that if the seller decides, well, I don't like that you're getting money off that, I don't have to give. And there was a lawsuit on this, and there was a decision that said that is a reasonable thing to say, I don't want to consent. So, and of course, buyer makes any misrepresentation or to the seller about any aspect of the assignment, stuff like that. But just remember, if your client's got a problem with the fact that money's being transferred for the assignment of that contract, they can say we don't agree to it, and it's binding. So that's for everyone to know if they're dealing with an assignment or a wholesale or anything of that nature. Okay? Figure that every time I bring that up, everyone's like, wait, what? Go, oh, yeah. So SB 410. We're going to finish up here. Oh, I'm sorry. I took out SB 410 at the last minute. AB 455, which has to do with sales of single-family homes to disclose any known indoor smoking or vaping. And it's just do you know of any smoking that's occurred in the property? It does stick inside the walls. So they've had that come up now with actual knowledge of residue or any history of occupants smoking. I don't know about you. I have friends that have smoked. I used to smoke for years. Just a simple disclosure. If they're not sure, I've had people come in and out. Just go ahead and put there have been friends or someone that smoked in the property. It's just to let that be known over. And that's now a new section of the TDS and SPQ. Any residue which may be indicated by smell or test results from smoking tobacco or any nicotine product, which does include the use of electronic or vapes. So just be forewarned about that, especially if you're dealing with like rental properties or things of that nature where you've seen people doing that. You have to disclose now if there's been smoking done. Finally, AB 851, which talks about prohibiting a person from making any unsolicited offer to purchase a residential area, real property in fire-affected zip codes. We saw this a lot in Los Angeles. We saw unsolicited offers. It was considered predatory. A lot of people were getting lowball offers on this and being preyed upon, especially in certain areas. So there was an emergency declaration of this. This is a law that codifies it. So it says right here, AB 851 adds Civil Code 2079, prohibiting unsolicited offers in certain zip codes by statute, which again was a previous executive order. That is, any type of text message, email, phone call, or other means of communication is barred in certain emergency zones or fire-afflicted zones, anything with a post-emergency. Unless, and I'll give you the short version, the property was listed for sale by the owner or their agent on a multiple listing service available for marketing, or the owner placed a for sale sign in the property, or the owner advertised that property for sale in print publication. Any offers made prior to October 10, 2025 are not subject to this law. It's now moving forward. Okay? So basically, if you're possibly purchasing a property that's in that sort of environment, you need to make sure that it wasn't like, say, an unsolicited offer, or you could be subject to some penalties or anything like that. I'm going, otherwise, they have to include an attestation affirming that the real property sales contract was not entered into as a result of an unsolicited offer. And that must be recorded to the deed. So yeah, this is a complicated one. So here's my recommendation, because I know a lot of you aren't going to remember this when we're done here, right? I know I wouldn't if I didn't have to reteach it. If you just remember this, if you are dealing with a property that is in a fire afflicted zone, go double check if you need to comply with this to make sure everybody's in compliance. That's the best I can say. Fair? Because it gets complicated. It could mean that the client has to say this wasn't an unsolicited offer and have it attached to the deed. So, because some people are like, hey, I'm cool selling my home. I don't care. So now we also have the wildfire disaster advisory, which had an update under the WFDA, which says post-closing issue, any buyer who agrees to bring the property into compliance with the defensible space law must do so prior to the close of escrow or be subject to possible fines and enforcement action by the government agency. Okay, so if the buyer chooses to do it and they don't, they're agreeing that they will be subject to any sort of fines or penalties. So what I'm going to skip ahead here because I know that we are just about out of time. There are some landlord-tenant issues. I want to show you guys this because I know we have a lot of people who do property management. So there are some laws. It's the last slide I'll go into. AB 628 is probably the most popular. It's one that says refrigerators and stoves are now required for habitability. That's very important because if my property is non-habitable, I cannot collect rent. So you must have a habitable property, which means you must have a refrigerator or a stove on there. Now, is it possible for the tenant to bring their own refrigerator? Yes, but you have to fill out the disclosure and they have to fill it out too, saying they're agreeing that that's what they're going to do. So security deposits received electronically can be returned electronically. Now, and we say that because it was still, if you received it, you had to postmark, mail, do all that stuff. So there is now allowance to send a deposit back electronically. SB 610, which talks about remediation after a disaster, that falls on the landlord. Regardless of any other settlement or anything that's happening, they have to bring the property back and remediate that damage. If someone, maybe the tenant's responsible, then they will handle those issues separately. We're talking about possible air conditioning requirements in properties. There is now a new defense for a 3-day notice to pay or quit. If you have a tenant who was furloughed through a government furlough, don't know any examples of that, right? And can't pay their rent as a result, they are not subject to the 3-day pay or quit. You have to give them the extra time for them to come back to work, get their money, and then pay the rent. That's in the state of California. And of course, we have new rules for substituted service of process. If you're using a process server, they will know those regulations and be able to relay them over. Closing it out here, you can still access the December forms quick release on car.org. Also, the new laws right below that, it's under risk management. If you guys have any questions, I'll be here for a little bit. Sorry for rushing. I want to make sure we fit the timeline so that our president can speak too. My name is Mike Shenkman. If you guys have any questions, feel free to message me. You can send something in the chat. Heaters are required to answer Maureen's question. That's actually my understanding as an older rule where we do have to have heaters for habitability in a property. So, any questions? Clinton, you're up. Sorry, I hate rushing through, but I was looking at the clock. I want to make sure everybody gets all their speaking time in.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. That was great information. I hope you all got some information that you all can actually apply to your businesses and apply to your whatever organization you belong to also. But at the same time, too, this is what we're going to be bringing throughout the year. This is just a taste. At the start of the year, we're kicking off 2026, making sure that you all are prepared for the market that's out there, right? With the right tools and the right knowledge so that you all can actually have a great 2026. So that was some good information. If you have any questions, I don't know if you're going to have a question and answer, but I'll leave it up to Carmen to decide that. So Midwinter Conference, yes, that's coming up on February the 16th through the 19th, 2026. Want to also encourage you all to actually get your tickets if you haven't gotten your tickets yet. I know there is an overflow hotel right now that just got sent out. I think it was last week because the original hotel is actually booked. So it's going to be a great conference. A lot of it's an opportunity to meet a lot of realtors and people who are performing at a high level across the nation, and also be in Tulsa, Oklahoma. All right, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. I'll be there, and at the same time too, I want to say yes, it's been a great start of the year for our organization, CAREB, and we're looking to have a lot more events coming up. And I'll pass it over to our education chair, Carmen Burton.
Thank you so much, Clinton. With that said, in regards to my updates, our next meeting is going to, or our next power session is going to be on February the 11th. Our power sessions will be held the second and fourth Wednesday of each month at noon, and we're going to have some great information. We'll have Angie Javier with Realtor.com, who's a national sponsor of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And it is going to be a great segue to what we will see in Tulsa as well. But she's going to be talking about AI, how to build your own ChatGPT, and so much more. And we're excited about it because we know that AI is really taking over, and we are using AI in all types of ways, from calling companies on the phone and you're talking to the AI bot, and to doing things, responding via text messages and things like that. So she will be here to help us. For the month of February, we also have the fourth, which I believe is the 25th, the fourth Wednesday. We are going to have Yvette Hitchison, who's going to be talking about manufactured properties and how you can make additional income and understanding manufactured properties. So with that said, that is it for me. I am going to hand this over to our president for any other words he may have.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Well, this was one of our first meetings, the power sessions, as we call it now, to kick off the year. Also want to thank our sponsors, PNC, Deborah, Roderick, and Deborah and Roderick, basically. At the same time, Ricky, yes, Deborah, Roderick, and Ricky. Thank you very much for the presentation and for actually supporting CAREB and the mission. And as we end, I just want to say, yes, if you all need anything, we're always accessible. Please, I encourage you all to fill out the surveys that were sent out about the conference and also legislation. This is where we want to be more member focused this year. There's benefits to being a member. So we are in membership season right now. So we would love to actually let you know this is the value of being a realtor. Number one is we give you a lot of information and tools that will make you successful in the business of real estate. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next session.